So in closing out Galatians chapter 6, Paul's talking about carrying each other's burdens and restoring one another in the faith. And at the same time, reaping what we sow, getting the consequences for the actions we choose. And all of this can go in multiple different directions. But I want to kind of focus in on the aspect of carrying one another's burdens. Now, in the context of this, how I'm understanding it is, it's when we sin, it's someone coming alongside, let's say me, after my sin, and correcting me gently and with all love, and me accepting that correction, and then us working together for forgiveness, for walking the right path. And that's the burden that's being carried, is the burden of helping one another with our sin. And so at the same time, making sure that we don't fall into that same sin, that we are helping a brother or a sister through. And I think through this sometimes, and I'm like, I've had multiple people do this in my life where they point it out and then help me walk in a better way. Now, that doesn't mean for all eternity I have walked perfectly after being corrected, but it's the idea that we come along one another, that we support one another in doing what is right and facing the temptation to sin, but then correcting that and then walking in that right path. And the book of Proverbs has all sorts of instruction and sayings about walking in that right direction and making sure we go to that right place, which is the path of God, which is the path of righteousness. And I think Paul is pointing that out here, where when we sin and when we fail to live up to that standard, which we all fall short of God's glorious standard, for we are all sinners, when we do that, it's coming together to correct that. And again, not that we are earning anything by asking for forgiveness, but we are restoring relationship with God. And there are so many things that can distract us from following God. And some of them aren't necessarily even overtly sinful things, but we can turn it into a sinful thing with not trusting Him, not having faith in Him, maybe even asking the wrong questions and putting all that focus back in on ourselves. And that's kind of the warning that's further down in there, is we make it about ourselves, about our fleshly desires. And even when we're trying to help a brother or sister out, we can turn it into a selfish thing for ourselves. And that just disrupts the image of God through each one of us that are created in His image. And I think that's why the world sometimes just goes, well, you're just a bunch of hypocrites, you Christians. So if anything, take a warning that check your motives with what you're doing. Check your attitude with what you're doing. Check your own sinfulness and seek forgiveness. And then in that process, in humility, come along another brother or sister and encourage them in that same way to seek that restored relationship. So here we are, yet again. Tomorrow I have a different thought that started today. We'll get to that tomorrow, though. Thanks for joining me again. Have a wonderful day.